Welcome to Mana's Seal YouTube channel. The previous video link is on the description box or on the top right card. Volume 13, The Paladin of the Holy Kingdom. The Sorcerer King had been invited to many of the meetings to deal with these problems, possibly because they were counting on his prodigious knowledge to solve their problems. Well, the Sorcerer King had simply said that he did not know that much, and had merely sat aside to listen. Such a person could not have been summoned to meetings time and time again. The fact that he conducted himself so humbly despite being the king of a nation, only deepened Neia's respect for him. "What do you intend to do next, your majesty?" "Yumu. I had intended to see if the transportation of logs was going well. Are you busy with practice, Miss Baraja? If you don't mind, would you like to accompany me?" In order to solve the lack of fuel and housing, they were using the Sorcerer King's undead horses to transport logs from a distant forest. Initially, many people had been averse to using undead horses for transport, but now there was a steady stream of praise for the merits of these undead horses. "No, please allow me to go with you. I am your majesty's squire, after all." The knowledge that she would be able to perform her squirely duties at long last, and her delight at being alone with the Sorcerer King, caused Neia to unconsciously speak faster and louder. As a result, Neia's ears burned. Is that so? Then let us proceed." "Yes, please." Then, as though to interrupt her, a sky-scorching inferno erupted in the distance. For a moment, Neia wondered what was burning. But that was wrong. She had been too far off. That could not have been caused by any form of natural combustion. That fire seemed to be enveloping the city. In other words, it was a wall of fire. Neia's mind immediately recalled what the members of Blue Rose had said. "Your Majesty, that's..." "Ah, it is as you are thinking, and the same is what I heard from Momin. The time has come at last. It's Jaldaboath. He's attacking at last. Miss Baraja, I'm heading out." Had he anticipated this series of events? As though influenced by the Sorcerer King's calm attitude, Neia's heart calmed down as well. Or no, it would be better to say that the presence of a supreme being like the Sorcerer King gave her peace of mind. Where to? Jaldaboath's aim is still unclear. So, he might just be here to slaughter indiscriminately. However, if he has an objective, he'll either be targeting me or the Holy Kingdom's leadership, so it would be best if we met up. Tell your men to get ready for battle and then have them flee to a safe place. They'll be of no use against Jaldaboath. In that case, it would be better to have them prepared to deal with any demons which might appear. Since the city will probably be in chaos now, once you form up your unit, won't it be better to have them head outside the city? While his words had been unclear at first, perhaps he had organized his thoughts later on, because the middle part onwards was a non-stop series of instructions to Neia. "Yes. Thank you very much, your majesty. Alright, everyone." Well, they had made plans in case Jaldaboath led an army against them. They had not expected a blaze to surround the entire city. Another big problem was the fact that they did not know the extent of the preparations that the enemy had made. Neia gave her instructions. There was only a single squad here, and they could not do as they pleased, but as a team leader, she had a responsibility to do several things before her orders came. The instructions went roughly like this. Everyone in the squad was to take their families and head to the east gate, because if the enemy attacked, it was more likely that they would attack from the west gate. After that, they would form up at the east gate, and if there were demons outside the east gate, they would climb the walls near the east gate and attack them. In addition, they were to listen to Neia's adjutant until she arrived and adapt to changes in the battlefield conditions. Neia's subordinates obeyed her instructions and moved swiftly into action. "Your Majesty." After giving her orders, Neia turned back and saw that the Sorcerer King's eyes were on his hands, while he had used a flight spell to rise to somewhere around the level of Neia's head. "Your Majesty, let me go with you." Perhaps he was startled by Neia's shout, but the Sorcerer King suddenly closed his hand, and a quiet sound came from within. Well, alright." The Sorcerer King cast a flying spell on Neia as well. In that moment, she realized the greatness of magic as she learned what it was to fly. Neia and the Sorcerer King moved as though they were skimming along the ground. They did not leave the surface except to soar over crowds of people who had descended into chaos, because they could not get a grip on the situation. The reason for that was because flying in the air without cover made them very obvious, and if there were demons about, they might be subjected to attack spells from all directions. Neia bit her lip in unhappiness, feeling like she was being a burden. Whatever spells the demons use, they could not possibly pose a problem for the Sorcerer King. She could not help but think that he had chosen to go the long way around, instead of flying directly to his destination because she was around. Eventually, they reached their destination, the headquarters, which also doubled as Caspian's chambers. The two paladins at the door had their hands full trying to manage the people jammed up near the door. "Miss Baraja, we'll go in from above." "Yes." After seeing that it would be a little difficult to enter from the front door, the two of them floated up and arrived at the balcony. Just then, the window facing them opened up. Your Majesty. Thank you for coming. It was a paladin. Are the others here yet? No, Your Majesty. The priests are assembling. Vice Captain Montaigne is off to liberate a prison camp and isn't expected to return today. Right now, only Captain Custodio and Prince Caspian are present. Is that so? Still, it's good that the two of them are here. Lead the way. Yes. After the paladin led them to Caspian's room, they could hear a loud discussion through the door. It seemed quite chaotic. The paladin opened the door for them, and over a dozen pairs of bloodshot eyes greeted them. Sorry I'm late. We're out of time, so what plans were you discussing just now? Everyone glanced at each other, and Caspian spoke up on their behalf. We have not spotted Jaldaboath yet. Your Majesty, could this fire have been made by a magic item or a demon other than Jaldaboath? I am unsure. After all, even I could not do such a thing. The others were shaken. The Sorcerer King employed magic that beggared the imagination. How powerful must Jaldaboath be if he could use a spell that even the Sorcerer King could not? In that case, what effects does that fire have? Blue Rose said that they managed to pass through it, then surely normal people can do so as well, right? After saying so, Remedios turned to look straight at the Sorcerer King. That wouldn't be a problem. As for its effects, demons standing inside the fire benefit from improved attributes, negative karma spells will do slightly more damage, item drop rates will increase, and many others. But according to the results from the investigation team, none of those were in effect. Still, whether it does anything else remains to be seen. Which means we can freely move in and out of it, right? Didn't I say that at the beginning? In that case, we ought to evacuate as long as there are no demi-humans or demons around, and then form up into units there. After all, I heard that demons appeared within the area surrounded by the fire when it was last seen in the kingdom. Let's go with that plan of action, everyone. After giving the paladins their orders, he asked the Sorcerer King again, can you use your magic to pinpoint Jaldaboath's location, Your Majesty? If I could, I wouldn't need to stay in this city now, would I? You have a point. Just as the Sorcerer King was dealing with one question after another, everyone heard an ominous creaking. It started out quietly enough, and then it steadily grew to drown out the clamor in the room. One by one, they all quieted down, and finally, the only sound in the silence was the creaking. Everyone looked around uneasily. Just then, Neia noticed something odd on the outside wall of the building, and exclaimed in awe. A crack appeared on the wall, and as everyone watched, it began to spread. The wall bulged, and then... Get away. Just as Remedios shouted, the Sorcerer King stood in front of Neia. The wall broke apart with a mighty crash. Bricks flew through the room like a spray of shotgun pellets. Groans filled the air. They came from those people who had been hit by the fast-moving masonry. If the Sorcerer King had not shielded Neia with his body, Neia might have ended up wailing on the ground with him. Thank you. The Sorcerer King held up his hand to stop Neia before she could thank him, and then he pointed at the smoke-spewing gap in the wall to draw her attention there. There was a gigantic silhouette there, the color of a roaring blaze. Thank you for the warm welcome, humans. It was a deep and powerful voice. As though cutting through the smoke, that being slowly leaned in through the hole in the wall and entered the room. It was a demon. Due to his vast size, he had to bend down in order to barely fit inside the room. His posture looked a little stupid, but now was definitely not the time for laughter. Her throat could not work properly. She wanted to swallow the saliva pooling in her mouth, but it stuck there instead. This was an overwhelming mass of power. Neia had never been very good at judging the strength of her foes relative to herself, but she understood that she could not win against him, even with tens of thousands of Neias. She was swallowed by a wave of power comparable to the Sorcerer King after removing his ring, and she could not move a muscle. It was then that she realized who she was facing. That's Jaldaboath, the Demon Emperor Jaldaboath. His face was filled with wrath, his wings were red, and his burning arms he seemed to be holding something in one hand, and Neia could not help but doubt her eyes. That was though she dared not believe it a lower body. It emanated a vile stench, one of advanced decay. Kaya. It was a shout, no, a scream. It was a sound that only one who had burst the shackles on their emotions and fallen into madness would make. It came from behind Neia. Neia's back shuddered. The person making that sound was Remedios. Remedios raised her holy sword high and charged straight at Jaldaboath, not caring about her own defense. This was too rash. Even Neia, who was not skilled with swords, felt that it was a foolish charge. Get lost. Those weighty, quiet words were accompanied by the sound of splashing. At the same time, Remedios flew in a straight line and crashed into a wall. Her impact was so loud it seemed as though the entire building would collapse. After that, Remedios, who had been swatted aside like a fly, collapsed limply from the wall. It would seem Jaldaboath had sent Remedios flying with the object that looked like a human's lower body. Neia would have surely died if she had taken that hit. But as expected of the country's strongest paladin, her life did not seem to be in danger. In its place, a revolting odor began to spread through the air. The room was filled with chunks of meat from the decayed lower body that Jaldaboath had used to strike Remedios. Ah, what a mess. I sincerely apologize for getting the room dirty. Of course, it would not have ended up like this if that woman had not charged at me without thinking. Well, that's just an excuse. Please forgive me. Jaldaboath slowly bowed his head. He seemed genuinely apologetic, but that only made everyone else more afraid. And then, he casually dumped what he was holding, something that looked like the charred remains of a human ankle, to the ground. My, I guess I got a little too carried away while swinging it around, and the top half flew off somewhere. It's a dirty little thing, so I've been looking for a chance to dispose of it, but in the end I managed to make good use of her. Am I not a kind demon? She must be thanking me from the afterlife. Jaldaboath muttered to himself. Ah. Remedios touched herself as she wailed in anguish, fresh blood streaming from the corner of her mouth. No, she was collecting the chunks of meat that were stuck to her. What was she doing? Has she lost her mind? Neia wondered. No, there was a meaning to her bizarre actions. Don't tell me, that corpse was, how could this be? Although the lower body had tattered bits of what looked like armor stuck to it, it should have belonged to a woman. In that case, she could imagine two people that it could have been. If that was really the case. What a lovely sound. Jaldaboath waved his hand like a conductor. In that case, I believe this is the first time we have met. Sorcerer King Ainzulgaon Dono, or perhaps Sama, would be a better form of address. It doesn't matter. Now then, I trust you're here for a showdown with me. Indeed. No number of weaklings will make a difference. I concur on that point. I have no intention of generating meaningless deaths. Still sniffling, Remedios looked towards the Sorcerer King. Your Majesty, you are strong. Stronger even than Momin. I hope you will allow me to adopt a strategy that will guarantee my victory. Jaldaboath raised his hand, and a head poked itself through the hole. It was a woman wearing a mask and a maid's outfit. There were two of them, in fact. I trust you will not call me despicable. Well, this is, The Sorcerer King was starting to get worried. No, that was only to be expected. Nobody could have expected Jaldaboath to arrive with his maid demons in tow. However, that's probably not the case. The Sorcerer King is wise, and he must have anticipated this. In that case, why is he like this? Could it be that it's because we're here? Perhaps he's not confident of protecting us all as well, which is why he's worried. Your Majesty, please do not worry about us. Eh? The Sorcerer King made a tiny exclamation of surprise.